You're listening to Yum Cha, a news podcast from Hong Kong Free Press, with me, Mercedes Hutton. This week, Fighting Two Tigers with Emily Lau. Yum Cha's first guest is Emily Lau, a journalist turned politician, who in 1991 became the first woman to be democratically voted into Hong Kong's Legislative Council when the city was still under British colonial rule. Ms. Lau is known for her support of press freedom and human rights. She used to lead the city's largest press group, the Hong Kong Journalists Association, and was later chair of its largest pro-democracy party, the Democratic Party. Today, she remains one of the most outspoken political figures in a city where many of her colleagues have been arrested and detained, and much of the opposition has been silenced. Here I am with the legendary Emily Lau.
You've got to be kidding.
Don't pull a face, it's true. It's a real honour to meet you.
Well, nice to meet you too.
Thank you. For those who aren't aware of you or are less aware, if you could introduce yourself and your journey from a journalist in the 70s to a politician in Hong Kong.
Well, I studied in Hong Kong, primary school and secondary school. And then I went to university in America. I went to the University of Southern California to study journalism, broadcast journalism. And then I came back in 1976 and I got a job with TVB News, but because the pay was so disgraceful, so I didn't accept it. And then I went to the South China Morning Post, which paid slightly more. In fact, they said they were looking for a senior reporter, but okay, as a cub reporter, you would do. So I got my first job. And then after 1 or 2 years, TVB back in again, and still very bad pay, but I thought I have to try it.
Right.
So I went to TVB to do as a news reporter, and then I became a documentary producer and so on. And then in 1981, I left to study again.
Okay.
This time I went to the UK to do a master degree in international relations at the London School of Economics, which was only a 9-month course. But during that time, I was very busy because I was freelancing for TVB, covering the Sino-British negotiations on the future of Hong Kong, because the EXCO members, they would form delegations to go to London to see Prime Minister Thatcher, so I would do some reporting for them. I even covered the Falkland War for TVB, doing some interviews with MPs.
Right.
And then after I finished, I got a job with BBC Television as assistant producer in current affairs. I first worked for Newsnight, and then I worked for Breakfast Time. And then at the beginning of 1984, I resigned from the BBC. They were quite surprised because there were no Chinese working there. And I said I have to come back because that's the year when the Chinese said they would either reach agreement with the British on Hong Kong's future. If not, China would go it alone. So I came back, and then TVB asked me to join them again. And then I turned them down again because the pay was really bad. Actually, it still is very bad. And then I waited a few months. I got a job with the Far Eastern Economic Review, which is a weekly English magazine, as the Hong Kong correspondent. And then I worked until 1991, when then we knew there would be election to LegCo. First time. Direct election to LegCo. So I resigned from fear, and then I also stepped down as chair of the Hong Kong Journalists Association and worked 6 months with no pay to fight the election campaign. And I got elected as the first woman directly elected, and the only woman directly elected that year to the Legislative Council. So the rest is history.
And obviously that was a very, very different time from now. At that time, were you with the Democratic Party?
No, much later.
Okay.
And when I stood in 91, I stood as an independent.
Okay.
And then a few years later, just before the change of sovereignty, I formed the Frontier with some other members. And it was not a political party. It's just a pro-democracy lobby group.
Right, okay.
And then I think a few years later, the frontier merged with the Democratic Party.
But democracy was always at the kind of core of what you believed Hong Kong should have.
Democracy and also human rights, the rule of law, and all these basic, universal rights.
And you continued to fight for those.
Oh yeah, of course. I remember after I stepped down from LegCo in 2016, I think it was the following year or a bit later, because I've always been very interested in, among other things, the rights of foreign domestic workers.
Right.
And then on that occasion, I was invited to go to Jakarta. There was some kind of conference or events to support foreign domestic workers, so I was invited to go along, and I was invited to go on stage to speak. And then I told them, I said, I have stepped down from the Legislative Council, but I will never step down from the fight for democracy and human rights and the rule of law. They were so excited. And I was telling the truth.
So going back to the agreement, the Sino-British joint agreement, obviously at that point in the 80s, there was no democracy in Hong Kong. The first direct vote was in 91, which you ran in and won. Do you hold the British responsible for the state of democracy or lack thereof in Hong Kong these
Well,
days?
of course.
Yeah.
I mean, they've run Hong Kong for so long, 1.5 centuries.
Yeah.
And when they left, not like other colonies, they even fought a war with Argentina over Falkland Islands, as Ronald Reagan said. It was just an icy cold bunch of rocks with so many sheep on it, and they fought a war. Well, we never asked Britain to fight a war with China. But it's true that they did not allow Hong Kong to have elected legislative council. Even the Falkland Islands, 1,800 people, they have elected legislative council. They had tripartite negotiations on their future. And the Falkland Islanders always refused to be handed over to Argentina. That's why the talks broke down and Argentina invaded.
Yeah.
So I never asked them. But if they have to leave Hong Kong, which I think Thatcher tried not to, but of course in the end she had to cave in and she tumbled down the steps of the Great Hall of the People.
Yeah.
Then I think the least they should have done to Hong Kong people at that time, there were over 3 million British citizens in Hong Kong, and they were third-class citizens with no right of a vote. So at least they could do it. And they were always saying, oh, don't worry. The Sino-British Joint Declaration is very good. Everything's going to be okay. Well, if it's really true, then if you give British citizenship to the 3 million odd people, nothing will happen.
They won't want it.
Yeah, they will want to stay here because everything is so good. But then they will feel more at ease knowing that if things do go wrong, they have a place to go to.
Yeah.
But no, that didn't happen. No democracy, no election, no nothing. So you know the question I put to Thatcher?
What was it?
That was in December of 1984, just a few months after I joined the review. And she went to Beijing to sign the joint declaration with Chinese Premier Zhao Ziyang. Now, of course, both of them have gone. And she signed the joint declaration, then came down to Hong Kong to call a press conference at 8 o'clock in the morning because she had to rush off to the airport to fly back to London. And I was with the review. And so I said, Prime Minister, 2 days ago, you signed an agreement with China promising to deliver over 5 million people into the hands of a communist dictatorship. Is that morally defensible? Or is it really true that in international politics, the highest form of morality is one's own national interest? Oh, look at that. I'll send you the clip. Let me tell you this. Britain has done its best for Hong Kong. We've done everything we could for you. We've done everything. And everyone in Hong Kong is happy with the agreement. Everyone is happy, and you may be a solitary exception. If you read George Orwell's 1984, solitary exception is the definition for insanity. And that's what Maggie thought of me. Yeah. So, just to prove her wrong, I got myself elected with a whopping majority in 1991. There were 7 candidates in my constituency, 6 men and me.
Yeah.
And I defeated all of them.
Not so solitary anymore. And in those few years running up to 1997, the handover from Britain back to China, how did Hong Kong then compare to Hong Kong now, 25 years on? Obviously, a lot of people left at that point, as a lot of people have left recently, but many of those people came back. I wonder whether you think the people who are leaving now might come back, or if there's any parallel between those times.
Well, I think maybe a very small number who have left may come back, but I think most will not, because many of them left with their whole family, especially very young kids. And I recently saw a story, looking at figures in the UK, children born to Hong Kong immigrants. Yeah. And many of them, they refuse to give birth here. They went to the UK and they have babies. So John Lee has to do something about that. So, but I always, when I talk to other people, and I say, we can compare Hong Kong with this and that, and of course there are places which are far worse, like Gaza, like Ukraine, like Myanmar, like Sudan, like Afghanistan. The list is very long.
It is, yeah.
So maybe we don't need to compare ourselves with them. We just compare ourselves with ourselves. Maybe not in 1997, maybe just 5 years ago, Hong Kong, or 10 years ago. I mean, not too many years ago, Hong Kong press freedom was ranked 18 in the global list. Now we're 145, and that's like Hong Kong has fallen off a cliff. So things are very, very difficult and quite desperate now, and it is very sad. Recently, somebody from the because I still talk to people from the pro-establishment camp, and the person said, what should we do when half the society are against us? And some young person, when I repeated this to my young friends, because I have some mentees and things, they said, no, not 50%, it's 70%. Well, 50, 70 or whatever. But it's good that some people in the establishment recognize that there is such difficulty. So what did I say? I said, well, if you know they don't like you, you should do something to make them like you. It's as simple as that. And the thing is, if there are people, many of their families have left, because they still have families left behind, whether they are grandmother or whatever. And there are those who are in prison, and those who have been arrested waiting for trial, and those who have lost their job in news organization. All these people, how can they be happy? Because for a while the government was trying to kickstart some campaign for happy Hong Kong, and people kept telling me, no, people are not happy. If they're not happy, they're not going to go out and celebrate and have parties and all that. But I guess the administration doesn't want to recognize that, or say, well, tough, that's it. Our top priority is not a happy Hong Kong, but a very safe and secure Hong Kong.
Yeah.
And if there are terrorists lurking at every corner, we're going to get them. And that's it. And of course, the Legislative Council has approved billions of dollars for the National Security Police and so on. So it's very sad. Of course, we want security. I have got nothing against that. And some would say, hey, you want to criticize the national security law? Do you know of countries which also have such laws? Most of them have such laws. And actually, they are harsher than Hong Kong. I said, okay, that may be the case. But I haven't noticed that in those countries, they have this huge exodus of talents,
Right.
the hemorrhage of talents. If that's the case, they are so fearful, they would be leaving too.
Exactly. This law that was only supposed to affect a very small
Exactly.
amount of
I guess
people
in
has
those
a huge
countries,
impact.
maybe, but here, even, former principal official Anthony Cheung and the chambers of commerce, the foreign chambers of commerce, they all say, well, with the NSL, it's very unclear.
Yeah.
We don't know who you're trying to target. Everybody is very fearful. So that's why people are anxious, people are frightened, they have relatives or friends who are... So that's a problem.
Yeah. It is. And we're a month or so out from the first overhauled Patriots-only district council election. We're looking at a race with no opposition, again. And potentially also a very low turnout. Do you think people have kind of given up on politics? Do you think they don't care?
Some have. And some people told me that, which is okay if that's how people feel. I don't.
No.
I know of people who don't. And those members of my party who want to stand, of course they don't.
Yeah.
So it is something that, people feel when they are in that environment, they feel that way, that's fine. But if, like my mentees, very young, say, oh, I'm very disillusioned. I feel quite, very negative. Oh, I said, have you ever heard President Zelensky saying those things? Are the Ukrainians very disillusioned? They have people dying every day. They get bombed every day. And then my mentee said, oh, yes, that's right. He said, I'm not qualified to say I'm disillusioned. So everything's relative.
Yeah.
So, but if you compare yourself with what Hong Kong was 5 years ago, now you think we are in a much more desperate situation, you feel bad, that's fine. But then if we look around us, and this is a bloody world, quite horrific.
It's quite something, yeah.
Yeah. And in fact, I can still sit here and talk to you, which is not possible in some other places.
Yeah.
So I just do my best. But when people hear me saying that, they say, oh, yeah, that's true. We are far better than Ukraine or Gaza or Myanmar or Cambodia.
Yeah.
Of course. So we should do the best we can. But of course, we have to be realistic.
Yeah.
We are up against the Chinese Communist Party. We're not up against the Red Cross. So, I mean, maybe a few years ago, some people thought differently. But my party and others, we know.
Yeah.
And they have a long track record of how they treat people.
We can look.
Yeah.
We can see, yeah.
So we have to be realistic, but that doesn't mean we just give up everything.
No.
And also, being realistic, meaning that, you may think you are doing the right thing or whatever, but one day you may be arrested. You may be thrown into jail.
Yeah.
So you have to be prepared for that as well.
Yeah.
And if you really can't face that, that's why you want to crawl under the table or whatever, that's fine. But I think we should know what is possible, what may come, and then do what we think we can accommodate.
Yes.
If we are so frightened, then of course. Yeah.
I suppose, arrest is a real possibility for you.
Yeah.
Is it something you fear?
I don't want to spend time in prison. I have visited my friends
sure
so
spent
many.
enough time already.
Yeah. And the National Security Police have visited me.
They have. Okay.
It's on the day when they visited mainly the Patriotic Alliance.
Right.
And they visited my group, which was the China Human Rights Lawyers Concern Group. And they also visited the China Academy. So that was a few years ago. They visited all the directors that morning.
Right.
So they came and they asked for information about, because they allege we are foreign agents, and they wanted information about the organization, about the directors, the staff, and everything. So they visited me, So, and I live alone.
Right.
So they came at 7 a.m. Ding dong. I knew it would be them.
Right. You're like, no one comes this early.
So I opened the door and they say, can we come in? We're National Security Police. We want to give you something. So they tell you, we're not coming to arrest you. We're not coming to search your place. We want to give you something. So I let them in. And they give us the letter. And I think that letter was identical to the letters given to the directors of all three organizations. So, I mean, yeah. And then, of course, in the end, we decided to dissolve.
Right.
Well, if we know that that is something they will not accept, tolerate. Doesn't mean that if we dissolve, we will be safe. No. But at least we took that step.
You're complying.
No, I don't think they asked us to. They just asked us for information.
Okay.
And so we know what's happening. But of course, people don't want to be arrested and then thrown into prison.
No.
But sometimes you never know.
Of course, and I mean, so many people have been arrested and thrown into prison and without trial.
And they have not been found guilty, but they've been there for 3 years already.
Exactly,
So we always say, well, justice delayed is justice denied.
Yeah.
So it's very, very sad.
And you've been a persistent court goer, right? You were there throughout the 47 Democrats.
I tried to go there as often as I could. That's right, because I think it's important. They were on trial, especially those who pleaded not guilty. So we go and support them, and many people went to support them. But then some people who did not support them, they also showed up.
Yes.
And I think they got paid. They occupied quite a number of seats.
But I think that happened throughout, or was that
throughout?
Really?
And but I think that the court there in West Kowloon, they were quite good. They opened up many courtrooms.
Okay.
And they were called the extension courts.
Right, yes.
So because in one room, there's limited space.
Sure.
So if you get there early, you may get a ticket. And those people got many tickets. And so for those who are late, they give you a ticket to go to the extension court, where you can hear the broadcast, everything. But you cannot see the defendants, you cannot see the judges. And also, the court was quite good. After a while, if there are empty seats there, they come and ask you, hey, there are empty seats. How many of you want to go to that court?
Okay.
So you put up your hand, you can go back there. So, and that's something you can do here, but not across the boundary.
Of course, There's no such thing as an open trial.
No.
Yeah. And you've been in court this morning.
Yeah.
That one is...
It's on the Yuen Long, July 21st, 2019, the riots, the white shirts, and then the black shirts.
Yes, already for over 4 years later.
Very sad.
Very sad. Yeah, but I suppose, that is something we still have. So I'm going to quote from an article that was published by the SDMP in 2020, where you said, although we have no democratic government, the level of freedom, personal safety, the rule of law, and independent judiciary that we enjoy is much higher than in many countries with democratic elections in Asia. So that was before the NSL. I wonder whether you still agree that our personal safety, rule of law, and independent judiciary are something that we should remain grateful for.
I think that I would not say that they have completely vanished. Zero. Otherwise, I cannot go to court. And I cannot go to prison to visit my friends and colleagues. But they are sort of dwindling. And but that has always been something about Hong Kong, because we have no democracy. We've never had democracy. I tell you an interview I gave to the BBC maybe 4 years ago or something like that, and they called me up, Ms. Lau, we want to do a live interview with you at midnight in 2 minutes' time, radio. I said, okay. So I got up and did the interview and suddenly the interviewers, Miss Lau, some young people said, it's all you people's fault. Because all these years, you failed to get democracy for Hong Kong. And that's why we're now in the state we're in. Wow! I woke up. I banged on the desk. Good job it was just radio interview. I said, you go and tell them. Of course, Hong Kong has no democracy. We've never had democracy. Whether it's under British colonial rule or now under Chinese rule. But for many years, the people of Hong Kong enjoyed a level of freedom and personal safety and the rule of law, which was much higher than many countries in the world which have periodic elections. And many people from those countries and elsewhere, when they come to Hong Kong, they say, gee whiz, such a tiny city, so small, so free, so safe, and so vibrant. And you go and tell those young people, those things did not fall like manna from heaven. That was the effort, not just of my party, but of millions of Hong Kong people over the years. And how dare you say we have not done anything for Hong Kong? So this is the case. But now, of course, the things that we cherished, they're dwindling.
They are.
But I would not say that, no, completely evaporated.
No.
We are just like one country, one system, like mainland China. If that's the case, I cannot be talking to you now. And I cannot be giving interviews to all the foreign media who came to see me. Last June, many came to interview me because of the 25th anniversary. So I talked to all of them, Bloomberg, BBC, CNN, and then Bloomberg said, hey, Ms. Lau, we want to do a live interview with you on July 1st. I said, okay. And on that day, it was typhoon. And we did it in pier number 7 or number 8 with the harbour as the backdrop. So we did the live interview at 7:30. So after we did it, walked back into the room, we did it on the veranda. And the producer was so excited. Miss Lau, you know when the interview went up, because it was live, so it was global. He said, in Beijing, bam, black.
Really?
And then on the 2nd of July, I flew to Germany. And they all thought I was fleeing Hong Kong. And I said, no, I'm not. They say, no, you are. LegCo members.
Really?
I think they're all trash. And then when I came back, no apology. So the thing is, it's dwindling. But still, some. But you never know. When you have overstepped the line. So you have to be prepared. And what I always tell my mentees, of course I tell them to be positive. I said, but be bold, be wise, and be careful. So these things, they are contradictory. I said, life is full of contradictions. If you can't handle contradictions, how can you handle life?
Your mentees, can you explain more about them?
They are some are in secondary school, some are in university, some are working already, and some were given to me by the Academy for Gifted Education. I was on their board for a number of years, so they had this mentorship program. So they asked me to be a mentor. Some others, they were university, because when I was LegCo member, because many universities have these mentorship programs, and they asked LegCo members to join, so I joined. And some actually approached me themselves. So of all kinds. And these are young people, and I would meet them. Maybe we have a meal together, or go to a concert, go to opera, go to an exhibition, and just talk to them. And sometimes I even know their parents, and they would invite me home for dinner and so on. So it's just these young people, which I like. And of course, not too many young people would like to talk to me, so much older than them. But some do, because I don't think they have ever come across someone like me. In a sense, I spent so much time in journalism and so much time in politics. And these two areas, they are fascinated with. So I talk to them and just give them, my views, and they will tell me what they think. And I think, because I have no kids, so it's very good to meet these young people, sometimes on their own, sometimes I would gather them together so they can meet each other. So it's a fascinating experience.
And these are all youngsters who have an interest in politics, presumably.
Presumably, at least not bored, I say. I think they're interested, and which is very good. And especially in these times, I don't think too many people dare to talk in such an open way about the situation in Hong Kong to them. Even their teachers, they told me their teachers are very careful, and some are quite frightened too, because sometimes the students would report to the authorities.
They're encouraged to.
Yeah, so it's very sad.
Yeah. Working in journalism in Hong Kong, and I'm sure for you, with what you do, it is becoming harder and harder to get people to speak, particularly people to speak on the record.
Yeah.
You know, people who are, they're not involved in politics at all, still refuse to be.
I know. But you see, I speak.
You do.
And then I talk to some journalists. They would say they would not interview me.
Oh, really?
Because their bosses told them not to. Or even if they did interview me, the whole thing would be screened time and big parts would be taken out. It would not be broadcast. So they are more frightened than me.
Right, yeah.
Well, that's Hong Kong.
Yeah, that is Hong Kong. That is Hong Kong. Do you find it, I mean, as one of the few kind of remaining figures who is outspoken, do you find it lonely being
No, why should I be lonely? I have so many mentees, I have so many party members, I have so many other friends.
Yeah.
No, lonely is something that you create for yourself.
Right.
You may not have that many friends, so you're lonely, of course. Then you go out and make some friends. I think it's and also if you are lonely, you may get sick. You know, depression and all that. Is I heard that it's a very serious thing, whether it's with young or older people. But no, I don't feel. They say depressed. I said, me depressed? They are depressed. I will never be depressed. I said, I can fight 2 tigers. That's the attitude. That's the attitude I tell my mentees.
Yeah. It's a good one to have. And I think, you know, Hong Kong, for me, I'm not from Hong Kong. I've been lived here for 11 years now.
Where are you from?
From the UK.
Yeah.
But for me, what kind of drew me into Hong Kong in the first place was just the spirit of the city and the people here, and the willingness to get out on the streets and you know, make a noise for what they believe they deserved and arguably do deserve. And I'm going to bring this back to a quote.
No, before you do that, have you read The Lonely Planet?
About Hong Kong?
Yeah.
No.
Because they actually, that was of course a few years ago,
right.
They urged the people to come to Hong Kong because Hong Kong is such a colourful city, so safe, so vibrant, and they have demonstrations every day, but they're so peaceful and even musical. Yeah, that was Hong Kong that many people knew and loved.
Yes, it was, right? And
I don't know what they say about Hong Kong now. You must go ahead.
I'll have a look.
I don't think they have Hong Kong in it, and Hong Kong's not featured anymore.
No, perhaps not. But in 2013, so 10 years ago now, in an opinion piece for the New York Times, you wrote, in an undeveloped democracy, taking to the streets is one of the few ways that people can be heard. And we still have an even more underdeveloped democracy, and I mean, we can't take to the streets anymore. Do you think there's any other way that people can communicate their feelings to those in power?
Well, I think this is really testing our creativity.
Really?
Yeah. And I'm talking to you. I'm talking to whoever want to listen. And even one university has invited me to go and talk to the students, which is quite rare.
Yeah, right.
So I think we do the best we can. And I hope the administration will become less timid and more, you know, how do you describe it? Willing to listen, to engage the masses and allow them to have demonstrations, because a few were cancelled, and it's so very sad. And so we just have to keep pushing. And well, in Iran, so many people have died. So many people are in prison for demonstrating because of this headgear the woman wore, and then she was killed. So I hope we don't have people killed or whatever, tortured. But I think we have to just do our best to fight for the free living style that Hong Kong is used to, and which I think is promised in the Sino-British Joint Declaration and the Basic Law. It's not something I created.
You've made
I
up,
didn't.
yeah.
I didn't draft the Joint Declaration or the Basic Law. They were foisted on us, so they were there. So now what we're asking for is for us to be able to enjoy all these things of one country, two systems. It's difficult, but
Yeah.
well, never give in.
Never give in.
Give up.
Yeah. So I suppose my final question, and I think I already know the answer to it, but you still have hope for Hong Kong?
I think so. I mean, I'm not foolish, I'm not stupid, but I think we have to live in hope. And I have to quote someone who I actually do not like that much anymore. It's Aung San Suu Kyi, when she was under house arrest. And then some journalists managed to interview her. And then the journalist said, "Are you optimistic about the future of your country?" And she said, "Yes." "How come?" She said, "I have to have faith in my people."
Thank you, Emily.
Thank you.
That's great. Thank you so much. It's been a real pleasure
Thank you.
speaking to you.
Thank you.
That's it for this week's episode with former journalist and Democratic Party lawmaker Emily Lau. You've been listening to Yumcha, a news podcast from Hong Kong Free Press, written, produced and edited by me, Mercedes Hutton. HKFP is a member of the Trust Project. Find out all about our journalistic standards by visiting hongkongfp.com/ethics. And for more informative and impartial coverage, and to learn how to support our journalist-led newsroom, visit hongkongfp.com.